Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back to the Goliath Gauntlet presented by 983 Media and FAB Cards. I'm Tannon Grace, and I'm joined today by Uber Shouts. Uber, I know that you're super excited about today's matchup. They're playing for quite a big thing. The winner of this match is going to go into the finals, but you're really excited about this matchup because of the two players that are in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to get excited about seeing a Dorinthia player, and Josh Lau has cut a swath through the competition and made his way to this semi-final match, which is no mean feat for sort of any Dorinthia player, and we're dealing with one of the best here. Standing in his way, though, is going to be the pretty incredible Majiinbae, whose Icelander list has already led him to victory in one Goliath Gauntlet in the past, and he's looking pretty good so far. Now, we're adopting the banner restricted announcements from LSS recently coming into this game. So you will notice the Icelander deck will have some changes. And we've actually given all of our competitors from the semis forward a chance to make adjustments to their decks in light of that. So in our other semi-final, you'll also potentially see some slightly different deck lists, which of course will run you through at the start of this game. But this is pretty incredible stuff. This is a matchup that we have already seen so far in the Goliath Gauntlet. Viet Pham was one of the first players standing in Josh Lau's way, and he was able to get the win there. But it was pretty damn close against that Icelander matchup. So he's going to have to do it again against yet another master Icelander player.
Yeah, that was a really interesting matchup to me as well. Like when I saw, I expect to see Dorinthia do all these elaborate things, attack a bunch of times in a turn, do all these defensive and attack reactions. And we saw Josh Lau adopt a very long game plan in that matchup. And I was wondering if that's going to be what happens again here today. We're going to have to see that. But let's take a look at some of the changes that these players have made to their list. Uber, you alluded to it, right? We're using that new ban restricted announcement. No hypothermia anymore. No amulet of ice for the Icelander player here today. So Majin has changed his deck up just a little bit. And you were talking to me a little bit before the match today about some of the stuff that might come up here and the small changes that happen. Why don't you tell the people at home?
Yeah, sure. So obviously one of the biggest changes to Icelander functionally is that with Amulet of Ice departing, there's less ways for Icelander to make use of a sort of fuller hands, right? Try and actually make use of 2 action points on their turn if possible. Obviously, as the Amulet of Ice, had go again, you could do other stuff after that. And of course, it was the only card that allowed you to strip cards optionally as part of a fuse effect. Remember, Insidious Chill is mandatory. So now, without that in there, Majiinbae has to think a lot more about how he fuses, when he chooses to fuse. But his bard gives him something to do during that turn, right? Target player discards a card unless they play 3. It's virtually a card for card exchange, which is nice if you can hold on to it. It represents a 2-block in this deck, though, which again can be a little scary for the Icelander player going up against the warrior. And also, and as we've heard from a lot of Icelander players, it's not ideal, but they've also brought in 3 Command and Conquer here to help replace that hypothermia and Amulet of Ice. That's the only real differences in this particular list. You will note there is also a freezing point in the sideboard here for Majiinbae. Probably more of a combo card, less relevant in the matchup like Dorinthia, who's going to probably not try and give you nearly as much time. But that's Majiinbae's list updated as of the banner restricted announcement.
Now let's take a look at the one I think you're a little bit more interested in yourself. I know it's one of the ones, I'm a little more interested in the Icelander side, right? That's more my cup of tea. But I know at heart that you're a warrior and that you love this deck and you are a huge Josh Lau fan. What has he brought to the table today to change up just a little bit after he was allowed to change his deck?
Yeah, so obviously Josh knew that he was heading into Icelander, and then on the other side of the bracket, 2 potentially very defensive decks, right? Either Dashed or Oldham. So he has an opportunity to think a little bit more about crafting his strategy for any of those potential matchups. Now, the biggest changes in this list for Josh is that he actually has 3 copies of Rout. Most Dorinthia players have 2, one on the sideboard, one that stays in the main board here. Also another blue Warrior's Valor, so giving himself a functional blue that also can get brought in against Icelander and help you deal with some of that arcane barrier or help you pay through a lot of the taxation effects you're going to suffer from. There's also a copy of Shatter here. That card really is only going to be used against Rampart of the Ram's Head. There's not any other really good situation to sort of make use of those. Shatter requires the offending equipment to be on the combat chain, blocking that particular attack to destroy it. So there aren't that many opportunities to really get value out of it against your opponent's equipment per se. There's a lot of Blade Break here as well. For Icelander, the Coronet Peak is just a one-time block. Outside of that, pretty unchanged. Some of the attack reaction ratios have been slightly adjusted here. It's definitely a blue heavy list. Still 7 shunts. So it's just a 1 yellow Steel Blade shunt for Josh here. Again, that's going to be relevant in the Oldham matchup, less so in this Icelander game. This deck there's less tech towards Icelander. Maybe the blue ratio's changed a little bit, but I can see that this list has been played, and it's a private list of now. So I assume the games are all from Josh. 2 Icelander matchups, 0 wins. So Josh clearly feeling full of confidence going into this game.
Well, let's see if he's confident enough to get this one done. These players are playing for a berth in that finals of the Goliath Gauntlet, trying to become the second ever champion of our series. Let's head on down the match and see who wins.
The Goliath Gauntlet is brought to you by FAB Cards, where reality and fantasy meet. Go to kfabecards.com for all your Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Flesh and Blood needs. FAB Cards. Be who you want to be.
All right, get fist bumps here at the start as we will have Josh Lau playing from the left-hand side on Dorinthia and Majiinbae on Icelander here. On the right of screen, you'll notice Ironhide Gauntlet for Majiinbae, pretty standard equipment suite. And for Josh, it's Arcane Barrier 1 with a final Spring Tunic.
Yeah, I want to point out, I love the play mats the players brought here this week too. I love how personalized Flesh and Blood can be. You see people with, full art heroes. You see the graded armor sometimes and equipment. I love it. And, Majin giving a little illusion to the game that made him who he is today, or one of his first real big breaks. And then I know you and Josh put a video together of this card that's on his playmat as well.
That's right. Spirit of Arena playmat, pretty hard to come by, actually. Only available at the calling, I think, for tickets. So Josh really put the work in to get that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Majiinbae gets to deploy an Insidious Chill here straight away. So nice to have something to sort of do on turn 1 and deploy a permanent here.
Yeah, great turn 1 start for Majiinbae here. You said Insidious Shield and an Arsenal and over, and you're getting excited about this first play here, Uber.
Yeah, this is so nice. This is why you sometimes sideboard an extra Ironsong Pride into your Dorinthia list when you go second, because you can play that Ironsong Pride on turn 0, and you can start the game with a counter on your Dawnblade.
Yeah, this is really, really big for Josh Lau. We saw this in every game that I've watched of Dorinthia and every game I've played against it. I have found that the games get much, much harder for me whenever they start having counters stay on the Dawnblade, because it just starts at a break point, and that becomes a very big problem. This looks like we're going to start off with a Red Warriors Valor here as well.
Now, Alpha Blood pitched here. Not every Dorinthia plays the blue variety, but it does represent 2 sort of extra damage. If you're able to obviously get that reprise trigger. So it's pretty good for as far as the blue's concerned here. So straight away, hand getting torn to shreds. Aether Ice Vein fused means there'll be a discard unless you pay 2 trigger on the stack. So it's going to be a pretty hefty turn to play through because he doesn't have an arsenal. So this level of disruption is pretty impactful.
Oh, absolutely. I think every card is so important. And Josh is saying, not to mention, they're going to get that Frostbite over there. So this could effectively end Josh's. It's a possibility of making it very hard for Josh to do everything that he wanted this turn. So there's a discard effect on the stack here for Majiinbae, unless there's a pay. So that's a card. There's the Frostbite that's going to come in that possibly ties up some of these resources that Josh was expecting to be able to keep on his side this turn as well. Not to mention, Majin's going to go up to 37. That Fable is already in his deck, already getting some value off of it here. And then there's 3 damage on the stack as well. So much stuff to keep up with, because this is a blue Aether Ice Vein from Majiinbae.
There's no easy way to deal with this for Josh. It's going to cost him a whole blue again, if he even has another blue. Most Dorinthia hands, ideally, you have 1 blue in them. Josh will sideboard in extra blues for this matchup, but this is pretty annoying. He'll take all 3, and he's probably going to have to discard here, I imagine. No? Okay, another blue. He does have it. So opts to keep that one floating. Now, in many cases, Dorinthia will use her blue and actually block one of that arcane damage with the barrier, but Josh needs the resources here. He has to be able to swing Dawnblade. And this is still pretty nice, Tannon. It's a 7-power breakpoint because of that Ironsong Pride in play. It's pretty challenging for Majiinbae to block effectively. And Josh says, hey, I can get 3 cards from Majiinbae here. He can't. He's off his arsenal, basically.
Absolutely. And so you have to see, how is Majin going to deal with this? Like you said, 7 is a lot. It's really hard to deal with. But 3 cards left over in Majin's hand. I got to believe it's going to be difficult for him to stop this from keeping the counter on the Dawnblade here this turn. Unless he wants to give up his whole hand, right, Uber?
Yeah, if there's a defense reaction here, he's fine. He's home and hosed. It'll have to be a card plus D react, and they're all coming from hand. So all of Josh's potential reprise triggers will be turned on. But if Josh has to use a defense attack reaction here, he won't be able to swing that Dawnblade again and potentially get a second counter. So Majiinbae might be priced into, he might just put a 2-card block here. and then we'll sort of see what happens with the next one. There's also, it's hard to make use of Ironhide Gauntlet when you're not on a tunic counter. So best case scenario is Majiinbae is holding a 3-block and a Sink Below in hand.
As we'll say, using your armor this early in the game, your equipment doesn't seem super great. Like you said, those gauntlets are going to cost him 1 as well. So that's a whole card coming out of his hand. So that option doesn't seem great either. You can see Majin taking his time with it already. Both these players are very, very just pedal to the metal first turns in this game. Is this what we should expect from the current Icelander and Dorinthia builds? And it looks like this is going to be a triple block. There were 2 block 2s in his hand here.
He got him.
Oh, no.
Song response here. We go to 10. Yes, Josh cannot pay for another attack, but he keeps the counter, and he has stripped Majiinbae's hand entirely. So this is very good for the Warrior. It provides a window here to start to lean on and apply some pressure, as Majiinbae will just have to draw up and not be able to arsenal, which means that Josh will likely not be dealing with any disruption unless it's a Blizzard from hand here from Majiinbae. But Dorinthia cannot arsenal.
Yeah, fully effective time walk here from Josh Lau. Manj just going to pass his turn here, draw back up to 4, have no card in his arsenal. This is where you want to be if you're Dorinthia, right? Like, you've got a counter on your Dawnblade. Your Icelander opponent does not have an arsenal, and they've got a random 4-card hand that they have no way of setting up. So if I'm Josh Lau, I'm feeling great with how this game has started.
And this would not have been like this if Josh doesn't play Ironsong Pride on turn 0, because for Majiinbae, to be fair, he still has to give his whole hand because he had 2 blocks in there, which is a genuine concern for Iceland, and also bringing in Red Winter's Bite. Harder to block effectively against his Dawnblade. But, again, it also means for Josh, the positive is that Majiinbae, if he has the defense reaction to deploy, it's going to have to come from his hand here. So it's a blowout if Majiinbae is sitting on a Sink and just deploy Sink here, and Josh doesn't have like a non-reprise attack reaction. So protecting the counter here is very important, but you can see just how much of a massive difference the 1 counter on the Dawnblade makes.
Yeah, I had alluded to this earlier. I have nightmares of playing the matches against this when they have Dawnblade at 4, because it's going to cost you either some of your best cards or multiple cards like you see here. And Maj is going to go with the slight overblock here, blocking with a Hail and a Brothers from Arms and paying into it. So this is blocking, I think, 7 here.
It's a great block. Honestly, it's a great block. The only way that Josh can get over this is with like a Singing Steelblade. So that's tough for Majiinbae. There's not many ways. As Biting Blade also gets Josh there as well. But Singing Steelblade, if Josh pulls a Glint the Quicksilver out of deck rather, that means that there's an attack reaction in hand as well. The reason why this works is that Singing Steelblade gives +1 on its own. Then, you put a +3 on there, and all of a sudden you're coming in at 8, whereas Majiinbae's block 7 here. So Josh is eventually going to reveal the card he pulls out. So we'll know what he has in hand based on what he pulls out of his deck. And I imagine Margin will know that. So the Glint banished. Let's draw.
Yep. So the blue Glint, the Quicksilver here for Josh. And man, Josh is firing on all cylinders here early in this game. I love how you're like, well, this is great. This is okay for Majin unless he has this or this. And Josh has had it every time so far. All right, how much damage is this, Uber?
So Biting Blade comes in here and it represents +3 and +1. So it's +4 in and of itself. Josh goes up by 5 here. Now, Josh could have guaranteed the hit with just the Biting Blade here, but he needed a source of go again. So Glint the Quicksilver provides that and replaces itself. So obviously extremely high value. And the Sink Below comes out here. Now it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, and a Sink Below here. So that's going to actually stop all of the damage here from Josh Lau. And this is a big, huge play from Majin. So this is blocking 11 of the 9, and that's going to end the turn. What a timely Sink Below here from Majiinbae. And I mean, what patience too. Like you said, he could have just maybe led on the Sink Below there, and I think a lot of people would. And Majin showing you why he is a Goliath Gauntlet champion and a calling top 8 competitor with that patience. Now, his tunic's going to go back up to 3, but he is going to have to pass the turn back over to Josh Lau here again with no arsenal. But I think he's treading water pretty well with how good Josh Lau's opening hands have been.
Yeah, full marks for Majiinbae here, Tannon, because he's gotten Josh off that Dawnblade counter. He may have had to use his whole hand, but there's a whole game to play still.
Yeah.
And Josh really lacks the mechanism now to punish Majiinbae for underblocking. The math gets a lot simpler for our player on the right here. So pitching a yellow is interesting. It could mean a lack of blues, or Josh is holding some information back here. But off this yellow, he can still come in for 6 on hit, get go again.
It looks like is that a red warrior? Warriors
is.
Valor into a Dawnblade for 6. Yeah, here. Both these players operating at the extra tunic counter here. So there's 3 counters in their tunic, so each person with an extra resource whenever they need it. Majin kind of on the back foot these 2 turns, but like you said, so important that that Dawnblade counter is off. So Josh is fighting to get another one here for his further turns.
I will say that Josh has been able to play his most powerful card here in what 3 out of 2 out of 3 out of 4
Right.
turns. So this is that second copy of Warriors Valor. Definitely represents one of the biggest threats in Dorinthia's hand. If I see this, I block 9. I just snap block 9 a lot of the time. So Majiinbae here, I get no arsenal. But again, blocking with 3 cards might be correct if he can get 3 blocks in all of them and then just, pass back and weather the storm. Because once these Warriors Valors are gone, you're down to sort of Spoils of War, which, yes, is unconditional go again, but only gives you +2. And here comes the Iron Song Pride in here. Now, Josh is actually playing this. Interesting. So he's actually playing this before, in reactions, not after the hit comes through. So definitely says he's trying to push as much damage as he can. But going up to 7 instantly here, Majiinbae is like, well, yeah, I guess I'm just going to get hit in the face here.
Yeah, down to 27 as well. 10-point life lead already from Josh Lau. You said it right. When he's been able to play some of his most powerful cards every turn to start this game, you can see it. Majin, no arsenal, having to just draw up every turn and pass, and down to 27 already. And this turn's not even over.
So the reason for taking the first hit for Majiinbae might be that he's sitting on a sink here for this second Dawnblade attack, or may opt to sort of block with 2 cards here. There isn't really a great answer, but Majin knows that Josh, it's not just Iron Song response that Josh can use here to go up on power, because he has a tunic counter. So it turns on plethora of attack reactions in Josh's deck. It could be Stroke of Foresight, it could be Out for Blood, it could be Punctures. So a lot of options here. Taking that first hit means the Majiinbae probably wants to fuse something on his turn, or go in with like a powerful attack action. But this is a pretty scary spot to take all this damage, because that Iron Song Pride counter isn't going away. Josh has already hit. That's going to stay for another turn cycle at least.
Absolutely. So let's see. This attack is still coming in for 4, and it does look like it's going to be a double block from Majiinbae here. Bit of an overblock as well, which is fine.
Josh has already got what he came for. 7 damage and a Dawnblade counter. So depending on what this card is. Oh, good Lord.
All right, so there goes the...
Lord, Jesus, take the wheel. Here it is.
Little Stroke of Foresight here from Josh Lau. This is going to give the weapon +3, as well as that reprise trigger happening.
And Josh gets to check the top card of his deck because of reprise. It actually gives you +3 without reprise, which is what's kind of nice about it here. So
yeah, it's +3 no matter what. Yeah.
Now, what can Majiinbae do off 2 cards that will lock Josh out of really starting to leverage the 2 Dawnblade counters now? Because once you have 2 counters on Dawnblade, this is where Steelblade Supremacy and Spoils of War get much better, because now they're coming in for that 7 breakpoint. Coronet PQ, says Majiinbae. Josh offered tunic counter here, so he's going to have to give up a card.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think this is important for Majin here, and I was just about to say it going this turn. I think if he can affect Josh's hand in any way, shape, or form this turn, this would be a big win for him, because he's about to get hit by a very, very large Dawnblade, and if he can make it happen in any way that the Dawnblade doesn't hit, it's so impactful for him for the rest of the game, because these counters are going to stay there for as long as possible. If that Iron Song Pride goes away, then we get to kind of wipe it all away, go back to the beginning. We're just on a normal Dawnblade from there. So interacting with Josh's hand, I think, has got to be play number 1 in Majin's head here.
Josh obviously agonizing a little bit over what card to lose here, but hey, your weapon is now a 1 for 5, which is pretty excellent. 1 counter is manageable, 2 is getting scary, 3 is you probably have lost the game.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've played against one that got to 3 before, and I just looked at my hand, I looked at the board, and I was like, I don't know how I'm ever supposed to win from this point.
Yeah, you can just throw your entire hand, I suppose. There's always a chance of more shenanigans.
It still didn't work, Uber. I did that. It didn't work.
Okay, so Josh here is giving up the run through because he knows that Majiinbae is going to be incentivized to try and block him. He needs to find a way to get counters off this Dawnblade, and run through only really works when your attack is not getting blocked. It's for race matchups or for turns where the opponents aren't respecting your Dawnblade. So getting rid of that one here, it's a matter of just prioritizing whatever heat is left in his hand.
So let's see what heat Josh does have left over here. Looks like he's going to pitch a blue here.
Yeah, see?
The spoils of war.
This is, like I said, now with 2 Dawnblade counters, spoils represents 7. Non-conditional go again. So if there's a Twinning Blade here, Josh can go around and big block from Majiinbae, which might be what he's incentivized to do, or Josh can look for a way to go over it here.
So it does look like, yeah, let's say in response, we're going to have a Channel Lake Frigid activation. So that's going to slow Josh Lau down quite a bit, plus give him the Frostbite here.
The thing is here, Majiinbae is probably going to block with 2 cards and Iron Rock Gauntlet off the tunic counter here. So Josh has to pay 3 to swing Dawnblade here, which means he probably has like 1 attack. Yeah. So now he's playing face up. He's had to pitch that last card, which is really frustrating for Dorinthia. We really want to retain as much information as possible. So now this makes the blocking math fairly straightforward for Majiinbae. He probably needs to use Ironhide Gauntlet here. Block 2 cards Ironhide, I guess. It means the Channel Lake Frigid can't stay around another turn though. So that's the decision Majiinbae has to make. Do I keep CLF up? Do I get rid of these damn counters?
I think if you have to trade your CLF, a couple cards in your hand, to keep your life total where it is, and take these 2 counters off this Dawnblade, I think I'd be in to pay that price.
Yep.
Because he's just been, I mean, Maj has been on the back foot this entire game. I mean, he's gotten his nice, little shots in here or there, but let's be real, Josh Lau's turns have been so powerful so far this game.
There's a sink in Majiinbae's hand. First of all, you filthy bastard. Secondly, that's perfect. But here it is. So Ironhide Gauntlet, you have to use the equipment here. I think this is a fair trade for you. So block here, that's 5. And that'll do it.
Yep, and pay the 1 there to activate the gauntlet. So it looks like that's a block for 7 overall.
Should be 8. No, we got 3 block. The Wounded Bull, sorry. Yeah, so,
yeah, the Wounded Bull is only 2. Yeah, I was supposed to say.
Which is, it turns out, just enough. Now, getting rid of 2 counters from your opponent, yeah, you give up your hand. And oh, wait a minute, Majiinbae was a card?
Yeah, if this is an ice card to pitch to Coronet Peak, this is like a blue ice card. This is a pretty good turnaround.
Hang on. How does
it does look like it is.
Wow. That's amazing. Sorry, I miscounted the number of cards in Majiinbae's hand there. Apologies. I forgot the Channel Lake Frigid was deployed on Josh's turn. So getting to have that extra card left over is pretty huge. Majiinbae take the CLF up.
Uber, it's very easy to forget exactly where we are in the games when there's really good Icelander players because it's almost never their turn. There's stuff going on at all times.
I got to say the play here has been very efficient, very tight from Majiinbae. He's had to face down some really terrifying scenarios. He's dealt with a pumped up Dawnblade on 2 separate occasions and has found the answer both times. The issue for him, obviously, is that he has that he is behind by 12 life and he hasn't really been able to force much damage from behind this CLF or any of these more disruptive turns. Coronet Peak here still represents a significant piece of disruption for Josh. And Josh, frankly, is now priced into trying to chip some form of damage. That's about it because Channel Lake Frigid is up and he's lost a card. This is very difficult for Warriors to play through.
Is this like the turning point for Majin? Like this is what he's been fighting for the last 3 turns?
Well, he goes off Arsenal in order to peak Josh, right? So that is a concern. Majiinbae would love to sneak some damage in. He doesn't really matter what, as long as it inflicts a Frostbite plus Channel Lake Frigid plus damage from Majiinbae. If he gets it's even like a Frosting plus Waning Moon would be awesome. But yeah, it's just a block here. Josh is having to pay a lot to attack with this Dawnblade, excuse me. So, I mean, I think I would just go for a singular attack reaction and not trying to think about going wide, but for the rare situation where the Warrior player can't get value out of 2 cards in their hand. So it's a pretty rough turn.
Yeah, I mean, this is the turn you've got to be smiling if you're Majiinbae here. That's a 2 card left over. Yeah, 1 goes to your arsenal, but you're only going to draw up 3 here. We're back over to Majin, and he gets to actually do something for the first time in a while in his own turn, and that's going to be a very large Enlightened Strike going right at Josh Lau's face.
So I want to see the Braveforge Braces and Bolters both put in front of this attack. Maybe because Icelander now has CNC, Josh will just not want to do that. There are now on hits from Icelander. Normally, we just threw our equipment at Icelander the first time they deployed an attack action.
Yeah, get max value, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Josh is probably just thinking keeping Braveforge and Bolters means it's only 1 card to block a Command and Conquer. So we'll put these in front here and
looks like the Bracers are going to come out as well. Yeah.
I wonder about that. Fair enough.
I'm sorry, the Bolters. Sorry. Yeah, it is going to be a full block that Channel Lake Frigid is gone as well. for Majiinbae, but he does get to finally get one of those arsenals. He hasn't had that in quite a while here, so kind of operating a little more in the norm of what an Icelander deck can do. Back over to Josh Lau. That Spring Tunic is up to 3, so maybe that's one of the reasons he's willing to give up a little bit extra that turn. He has that extra resource here this turn as well. So he's got an arsenal and a card left over and some resources floating and an attack for Dawnblade for 3.
Man, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Ironhide Gauntlet was a gigantic pivot for Majiinbae.
Oh, I think it was like one of the most impactful. This game has been amazing from the beginning, and I think
he deploys a CLF and gets the Gauntlet value off of 1 blue.
Yeah, I can't stress enough how well Majin's played from behind early in this game. I think it's been unreal. And Josh's draws have been very, very good too. And like you said, I think we've just seen very, very good tight play from both these players. And they're showing you why they're both competing to play in the finals of this Goliath Gauntlet and to be called a champion, either again or for the first time for Josh here. And I mean, both would be great representatives. They've been playing unreal in all their games so far. So it does look like this is going to be another just kind of basic turn from Josh. And after those first 3 or 4 turns, Uber, these have been uninspired turns.
Oh, make no mistake. This is the definition of fresh hell for a Dorinthia.
Sure. And speaking of some fresh hell, here's some more for you as well. Here's an Aether Ice Vein that does have a revealed card to it, and it's going to also activate Insidious Chill. So if you thought your last couple turns were bad, rough, I've got some more for you here, says Majiinbae. Like, there we go. Josh just kind of non-ceremoniously throwing a card like, yeah, you could have this one, and I don't know if I need that. Wait, maybe not.
So there obviously, I mean, this is obvious why this is better than Coronet Peak, because Josh is on a Tunic counter, but also it's the damage that gets mixed in with the disruption. That's what's so scary. Josh has to part with 2 cards here, whichever way he slices it. I suppose the Tunic counter is actually okay if you have like a blue. You can go like pitch blue. You'd have to take all the arcane damage, which also might be Josh's concern. But that's like one thing you can do: pitch blue, lose the Tunic counter, keep 3 cards. Ordinarily, and the reason why last time we cast an Icelander matchup, I said it was a race. It doesn't necessarily resemble a race traditionally, but Dorinthia is not really incentivized to use Arcane Barrier at all, unless it's like a singular Aether Ice Vein fused. Now that there's an Insidious Chill coupled with it, it's hard to efficiently like part with the cards here. And this is why Josh is just gonna he's gonna take big deeps. Yeah, take 5.
Yeah. Down to 32, lose 2 cards here. So he's going to be going back into his turn with not a whole lot going on. It looks like the Waning Moon's going to come across for 2 more, and these life totals are starting to get very, very close here, Uber. Yeah. And that's going to be an arsenal as well for Majiinbae, 30 to 25, leading for Josh Lau. And he's going to start off with a Dawnblade for 3.
And so this is the loop that you get caught in playing this matchup as Dorinthia that you really hate. The odds of Josh playing with a full hand for the rest of the game are extremely low.
Yeah.
And of course, there's other disruption getting weaved in. The fact that Majiinbae was able to use that turn to do 7 arcane damage and to strip 2 cards from Josh's hand. I mean, think of the value. That's 13 value on rate for that turn. And obviously arcane damage being even harder to block than physical might even make it even higher value. So it's unbelievably good. Josh here is chipping damage. So this is a play pattern Dorinthia gets into with small hands or no go again. It's attack. They don't block because they don't respect you. Pump it up. Be happy with 6 damage and move on with your life.
Yeah, I think there was a red puncture as well. It kind of moved really fast, but it looks like it was a +3 there, and it's going to get Majin down to 19.
So Josh saying Majin may have a defense reaction here. It's not the best spot to use it in because Majiinbae, he's blocking 4 damage, but Majiinbae's defense reactions actually can block a lot more than just the printed 4 if they get in the way of a Dawnblade that's trying to get going again. Another Aether Ice Vein deployed here. Looks like yellow. That's going to be another trigger from that Insidious Chill.
And Josh has been trying to get something going again, and Majin's doing his best job at keeping that from happening. Now, Josh is still getting damage in. Majin down to 19, but here's another Aether Ice Vein. It's going to be fused. Insidious Chill trigger, like you said. So discard effect on the stack. Then he's got the Aether Ice Vein. He's not going to be able to stop everything. So he's losing 2 cards here again. I mean, small victories for Josh here. At least the Insidious Chill is gone.
Right. And if there's ever any turn where Majiinbae has to spend it all, deploying an Insidious Chill, that's pretty good for Josh. That represents an opportunity for him to start to make up some ground. Bear in mind, on the turn cycle, Josh took 7, Majiinbae took 6. So Josh has still been able to keep walking these life totals down in a way that favors him, despite being, heavily disrupted. He also had a pretty red dense hand and cards he wouldn't be able to make great use of. So that looks like a red that's gone into the bin there. And we'll see what the other card will be. This, if this is yellow, yeah, this is still, I mean, Oasis Respite can take care of it. That's one reason why you might want to play it in this deck. Josh doesn't play any Oasis Respite in this list. Normally, it's actually a card that's brought in against Kano and Bravo, and you just have it in the sideboard and say, hey, this could be helpful when they try and kill me with a combo. But Josh's deck is built pretty particularly for the remainder of this competition, so no Oasis here, no real way to like efficiently cover up an Ice Vein. And another Waning Moon chips in.
Yeah, so that Ice Vein was not efficiently covered, as you're saying. That Waning Moon does chip in as well, 24-19 here, but we're back over to Josh Lau. Still got that Arsenal. He's got a card left over with 2 resources floating here because of that blue. Still get that Tunic as well. And we're going to start off like usual, Uber. I'm sure you've done this so many times in your life. Here's a Dawnblade for 3. But it's like Schrodinger's Dawnblade. Look, it could be for 3. It could be for 10. You don't know.
Yeah, and I think for Josh here, you just use your attack reactions to push to get some damage, because you know that Majiinbae did 6 damage and got 6 value of cards out of you, so that's like a 12 value turn cycle. Dorinthia on small hands doesn't necessarily have the way to turn each card into 3 value. That's just kind of the way she works. There are some setup cards, some combo pieces, some cards that on their own don't really represent a huge amount of value. But once again, Josh is able to chip some damage and say, hey, here's an Out for Blood. The bolters will probably stay where they are for now. Josh is just going to be happy enough to chip some damage. Here's a defense reaction, and this is the defense reaction that comes at a time where Josh isn't necessarily looking to have grand aspirations on any of his turns. So I think he's probably pretty happy to see another sink out of the picture now. He knows that, you know, the average Icelander only has 3 of those. So he knows once he can get a good turn going, then he doesn't have to worry about that so much. And by the looks of things, Majiinbae, he's off an Arsenal again here. So in order to have these big turns, yeah, it looks like, yeah, Majiinbae, of course, now will have to think about how he structures this turn here. But I don't know if he'll, I don't know what to put in Arsenal. He had to give up 2 cards.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that you made there about the sink below and how high value they are in this matchup. And Josh can kind of shrug it off last turn. Like, if that attack works and gets through, if that attack reaction gets through, yeah, he gets the counters, Dawnblade, it's great. He gets to keep doing stuff this turn. But if it gets stifled by that sink below, this wasn't like one of those big all-in turns that he had earlier in the game, so it's not as big of a blowout. Speaking of a good setup, here we go. We got Majiinbae starting with another Insidious Shield, but you said to look out for one of these turns.
Yeah, I mean, Majiinbae still able to pocket a card here, so it's still a bit scary for Josh. But Josh comes into this turn, tuning counter up. 5 cards to work with here. Close to ideal as you're going to get with, you know, Icelander, unless she just draws an absolute brick hand. So it's the last Red Warrior's Valor coming out now. Now remember, an ice card from Arsenal will mean that the Dawnblade swing requires 3 resources. 2 resources. So that in mind, it's an Ice Bolt here coming from the pocket.
I think you were expecting it to be the Channel Lake Frigid. You know, you're just like, if it's a blue, it's all, you have like nightmares. You just wake up at night in cold sweats.
Kind of pessimistic. I mean, you do have to prepare for the worst situation. And you're right. Yeah, I was sort of speaking as if it were a CLF, but
I can see you waking up. I can see you waking up from a dead sleep at night, just like covered in sweat. And your wife's like, honey, are you okay? And you're like, they had the Channel Lake Frigid in the arsenal yet again. I just can't attack with my Dawnblade. That's all I want to do.
Majiinbae also could Waning Moon off a tuning counter here. I think that Daya is reading 3 right now. So
it is. I think it has for a while. They both players have been on 3 for a few turns. It looks like Josh is still thinking about this Ice Bolt.
I don't think you actually are going to AB one of this. So this says to me another blue in hand.
Yeah, it means he's probably gonna have some resources left over this turn, right? You know, like he had this happen in the turn before, where he had a resource or 2 left over at the end of the turn. So he wants to make sure he spends everything. So it looks like a second energy potion. There you go. Yep.
Oof, thank God the Majiinbae didn't attack with anything physical. That could have gone either way. Okay. This is pretty aggressive. Stillblade Supremacy out here now as well. So we're getting +5 on the Dawnblade, which, you know, means it comes in at 8. A little tricky for Majiinbae to navigate. He should still have 3 cards in his hand for this block. He had better hope that Josh doesn't have an attack reaction here, but you probably wouldn't. If you didn't have an attack reaction, I would suggest Josh would be more likely to pocket that Stillblade Supremacy and use it to set up here. So Majiinbae probably knows where his bread's going to be buttered on this turn.
Yeah, it does look like he's going to go ahead and use that Tunic counter and the resources left over. Go ahead and shoot the Waning Moon over Josh. Get those light tails a little bit closer before he takes this Dawnblade damage or decides to take this Dawnblade damage.
There is no way that Josh is going to pitch to this. I mean, you just cannot reveal the information. Like the tunic counter needs to stay there in case Coronet Peak threatens to disrupt another turn. And it might. Here's the thing. So Majiinbae, the blocking math is a bit tough for him. We also have to ask ourselves, like, what kind of density of 2 blocks are in Majiinbae's hand? You are not doing that. Unreal. He's actually pitching it. Okay, that's so interesting. So he's opting to take 2 instead. He's telegraphing an Iron Song response. But remember, Iron Song response gets a hit and gets him a card back, excuse me, if he needs to pitch again. So with a draw, when you're threatening a draw effect, you can play quasi face up like this.
Yeah, because for everybody at home, the Steel Blade Supremacy that's on the stack here, pumping up the Dawn Blade, it does give the on-hit draw card to the Dawn Blade. So yeah, like Uber said, this is threatening an on-hit that is very impactful here.
Majiinbae has a Sink Below in his hand. He might be the best player in the world. He just might be that good. That would be backbreaking for Josh.
Yeah, a couple other big blocks still available to him as well. There's something like, Brothers in Arms, but it's not that doesn't pair super well with what's going on here.
If Majiinbae had brothers, he wouldn't have Waning Mooned off the tunic.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point. I'm trying to think of ways he can effectively block this, because this is an 8, and that's hard to do without giving up 3 cards.
Yeah, which is probably a good thing for Josh. He's hoping that he can, put Majiinbae off Arsenal and off a position. Because remember, like if Majiinbae wants to fuse, he needs a card that requires the fuse, he needs the reveal card, and he needs a card to pitch for it. So, Majiinbae could be sort of reluctant to block with 3 cards in that event. There are some situations where he doesn't have to pitch a card to fuse. Brain Freeze is one of those cards. And that here we go again. Okay, what's happening here, Tannon? Why don't you tell the folks?
All right, so since we're playing across webcam, these players are hundreds, if not they're probably thousands of miles separated from each other. They can't go through their opponent's graveyard. So what's happening here? This is kind of respect between the 2 players. And they're like, hey, so like, can I go through your graveyard real quick and look at stuff? Usually, what happens in the game, you want to see, how many of these like specific reactions are left in their deck. Have we seen 3 of this? Have we seen 3 of that yet? So we don't have to play around it. So what Josh is going to do here is he's going to layer it all out and walk Majin through it. I have this, 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 and this. He doesn't have to tell him how many are in his deck, but he's like, this is how many have been played of each one of these cards. And, this gives Majin a better idea. Because Majin can't physically do it himself, we're having the players are showing some utter respect and helping each other out.
Yeah, and in many cases, I see the pink Welcome to Wraith foil biting blade there, Josh.
Ooh.
Respect.
So pretty.
In many cases, there's usually a ton of attack reactions left.
You could never get the full thing from Dorinthia, right? Like you go through their graveyard, you could see like 13 attack reactions. You're like, well, there's still a bunch left. I mean, I still have to play around a couple different ones.
So Blizzard is very powerful here. And the reason being is that Josh would drop a card on hit, not get the go again, most likely, and wouldn't have much to do with the extra card he draws because he's already has one in hand. We saw one pitched earlier on by Majiinbae. His deck features 3 of them. Block, block, block. Put them all out there. You either have it or you don't. Coronet Peak.
Oh, this is a huge block. See, what happened here is Majin got caught with multiple block 2s, it looks like, in his hand. So it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I think it's just the Findle's Fighting Spirit that is a 2-block.
Right. So he is going to technically gain a life from this, but the full block is going to happen through, and it does look like it goes through as well. Josh left over that last card in his hand. That's going to go into his arsenal, back over to Majiinbae, and Majin have to do this, I think, one too many times in this matchup. He's just going to have to pass back over with no arsenal.
Coronet Peak, though, has got its value.
Absolutely.
It's forced Josh to part with, at least 6 value worth of cards. And this is an off turn for your Dorinthia. Hit and run.
Blues here.
Yeah. Hit and run represents unconditional go again, but it's a whole card in order to do that. And obviously, Glint is better because it replaces itself. This is the way that Josh can actually make use of cards like Winning Blade.
Absolutely. That's a blue Steel Blade Shunt that's been pitched for Josh Lau. 2 resources floating. There's Dawn Blades coming in for 3.
No arsenal here for Majiinbae. You might just take this. It's just 3 damage. It's the second attack that would be the concerning one. And even then, Majiinbae has stuffed all of Josh's high power turns. So He's played around basically all of Josh's attack reactions on the turns that really matter. There are no copies of Warrior's Valor left in Josh's deck.
That's a small
He's
victory for
frustratingly
Majin
good.
doing that. Yeah. So it does look like that 3 is going to get through, just like you said, Uber. 17 now for Majiinbae. Let's see how much Josh has got left over on this turn. It does look like the bracers are going to happen here.
Majiinbae wants to block with 2 cards anyway, so this break point is probably very expected. Josh is doing all of this though while maintaining maximum hidden information, right? Majiinbae, I guess the safest is a 3-card block, or you literally, you block. There's no easy way to block Xaxes now.
I think this block is impossible, right? I'm sure there's probably a best way to block from here, but this is a 4-power Dawnblade because of the bracers being activated. But Josh has 2 cards left in his hand and an arsenal. It looks like the 4 just went ahead and got through. Yeah. So counter now on the Dawnblade.
Josh doesn't have a good way to make use of them. And this can happen. We could be looking at like reprise prize cards in his hand. It's one of the weaknesses of reprise, right? If you don't get that effect, you cannot get value out of the card. And hey, this is perfect. This is just perfect for margin here.
Yeah, we see why he was so loath to block with the cards from his hand. He really didn't want to. So that was, the light was green for Josh last turn. He just didn't have enough gas to get his car all the way through. That one was for you, Flake. And then this turn, he's going to start with the Aether Ice Vein. It's going to show a Blizzard here as well. It's a big card for Josh to know about here as well. But this is an Insidious Chill trigger as well. So we've got a discard effect here. Then we've got the Aether Ice Vein. Then I got to believe possibly a Waning Moon behind this, and then possibly the Blizzard's going to go into the arsenal. So Josh is going to have to at least worry about that a little bit over the next turn as well. And Blizzard can be pretty impactful in these matchups, right, Uber?
Yeah, it's worth bearing in mind that Blizzard doesn't need to go in your arsenal. It's an instant. So you can just play it out from your hand, get an extra Frostbite that turn, and still get the effect. Obviously, Majiinbae, he really, very clever because he really adequately assessed the threat level from Josh's previous turn. Enough to keep a hand that lets him fuse here. This is the perfect spot for this card. I can't overstate just how good this is here. It's going to represent, probably like a 7 life swing if Majiinbae, because he has 2 cards, right? Like why not just pitch for Waning Moon? You could hold the Blizzard back, but your opponent is starting to get pretty close to that insta-kill range for you.
Yeah, you're looking to get him to about 12, right? That number that we always talk about is scary when you're playing against Icelander.
And that's like ideal, right, Tannon? That's red Aether Ice Vein, blue Emeritus Scrolling, and a Waning Moon hit. Now, there's probably only 2 red Aether Ice Veins left here for Majiinbae. So, we don't want to get too stuck on that particular number, but Josh will treat 12 like 0 in this matchup. Just as, going against Briar, you sort of treat 8 like 0 because of like a Revel, against Visceral, because like a Revel and Rosetta Thorn, when you don't often have AB in that matchup. So, 0 isn't 0. It's definitely 12 here for Josh. And you have to prepare for the worst because you play Dorinthia, right?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's such a big thing to talk about is like, Josh has felt ahead a lot of his games, but that life total has been walked down by Majiinbae. And if you can get this just a little bit lower this turn, let's say like 4 or 5 of this gets through, then 2 of the Waning Moon, we're at that number. We're starting to get close to that number where you have to really be worried about everything. So I think that's what's taking Josh a little bit of time here. He's gonna have to pitch a card here. He could probably pay into it, then maybe AB some of the damage. So maybe he's thinking about, do I need to AB, the Waning Moon as well this turn? That's something kind of scary. He does still have that Tunic counter as well, so that's a resource that won't cost him a card this turn. So that's maybe something that he's thinking about using. So yeah, and it does look like that's what's about to happen.
Yeah, Tunic and a blue take 5 is pretty scary, but Josh knows that he has to, he's getting Majiinbae close to the must block zone, which means that many of his reprise effects are going to be sort of switched on here. So takes it all. Oh my God, that's scary. Okay.
Yeah,
Look, I gotta say, if Majiinbae doesn't, if Josh is playing against any opponent that doesn't understand Dorinthia as well as Majiinbae, he would have just blown them out by now. Mm-hmm. The blocking has been sublime.
I would have been dead 7 turns ago, Uber. I'm pretty sure. I would have died in the first 3 turns.
I would too.
The Dawnblade would have 3 or 4 counters on it, and I would just be, all right, I don't want to play. I'd be at 30 or whatever, or 25, and I'd be like, I don't want to play anymore.
So Josh is able to, with the Tunic counter, avoid his hand being completely shredded. He has a card in Arsenal too, which is also a positive. We might see Majiinbae deliberate about forcing the extra damage here.
Yeah, let's see. He's taking his time here for sure.
He's not moved to Arsenal yet, so he's definitely in the tank a little bit. Also, that's an emeritus getting. Oh,
Oh, that's why. That's why this took a little bit of time. He had 2 of his emeritus this turn, and they're so important at being able to finish Josh. Looks like he's going to take that damage, just go down to 13.
it says so much about what Majiinbae is expecting from the next couple of turns. If he thinks he can kill Josh, if he can go for the combo, then he probably just pockets that emeritus and starts to force damage here. But very, very measured approach here for Majiinbae. He is getting so much value out of these Insidious Chill triggers as well.
The thing is, he has to get so much value out of all of his cards now and play perfect because he doesn't have any equipment left over besides the boots, which don't do much other than the turn they're killing Josh Lau. So if Lau, he went to 13 that turn. We talked about 12 is the real danger number. So that was a pretty well navigated turn from Josh here. And speaking of turns, now he's starting off with a Dawnblade for 4. It does have that counter. There's a card in the arsenal, 2 cards in hand, and there's 2 resources floating here. So Majin's back in the hot seat here. Of you're in that must block territory like you're talking about. So he's going to go down to 9 here. This is the first. It's got to be bolters here. So it does look like they're going to get popped.
Blizzard got pocketed. Josh should know this.
Yep. So there goes Blizzard.
Because he saw Blizzard revealed as a fuse card.
And here comes a Frostbite as well.
Now, do we pay?
I mean, there's 2 resources floating. It works out pretty well. I've got to believe, I was going to believe this has been the plan. So there's the pay.
All right.
So Blizzard goes away here.
2 cards in an arsenal. Pretty scary here.
Still got the Frostbite. He does have an extra blue here, so that's going to activate the bracers. So it's going to leave him with 2 resources left over, so that's going to be able to pay for the Dawnblade attack here.
This is 5, and it's a must block. Well, I mean, you could take it if you are really brave.
I mean, if you have like a really big hand, like I'm trying to think of what's coming back. Like if there's
Josh can't kill him with a reaction, I think.
Yeah, if there's like a fighting spirit, maybe there's an instance in which you block with like 1 card and try to come back with fighting spirit if you can. Gaining any life would be big for Majin here.
So Majiinbae dies to red overpower if he doesn't block here. It's really it.
Have we seen any red overpowers yet this game?
We've not.
Oh, that's kind of scary. I think there's 2 in Josh's list.
You're definitely blocking this to some extent, I think, because, with 2 copies of that red overpower floating around, that's pretty scary. But this is, again, we're in a situation where there's not a great block.
Yeah, and then all the reprise triggers are like live every turn for the rest of the game now as well. You're just going to get reprised. Like it's just going to happen now.
Blizzard doesn't cost Majiinbae anything to deploy, so this should still be a full grip for him. So blocking with 2 cards is fine. I think blocking with 3 cards is also quite acceptable, unless he is trying to continue to drive more of these Insidious Chill triggers down Josh's throat. And in that case, then, hey, you need to hold on to some cards.
Yeah, full hand from him here. Only the boots left over. Had to give up the equipment quite early in this game, but felt really necessary.
Very elegant blocks, though.
Absolutely.
Just really made great use of those and stuffed Josh's power turns every time.
Yeah, Majin had to make a lot of really, really hard decisions this game, and he's made them correctly, which is just very, very impressive because it's easy to win the games where everything goes your way and you have smooth sailing. If you win games like this is what makes you one of the better players in the world. And this is why, Majin is such a feared player, is that he makes these decisions well. And then Josh puts you in these spots too because he's so good at what he does. Majin takes it, goes down to 4 here, and we have another turn of Josh leaving a card floating in arsenal and a card in hand. So he's only going to drop 3 here over to Majiinbae. He's got 2 counters in that Insidious Chill. He's got a bunch of cards left over in his hand. We need to see a big turn here, Uber, from Majin.
Yeah, keeping those cards is a big deal. He evades dying to
right.
Josh. Good. It could have been I guess it could have been like a sync. That was what maybe gave him confidence that Josh couldn't kill him on that turn. But going to 4, very scary prospect. He needs to extinguish Josh post haste.
We've seen most of the deck from Majin here. We're getting close to the bottom of it, and we've seen 2 of the sinks, so the third one's definitely in play. Maybe coming back around to that Marvel and that Fabled, and he might be able to gain a life off that at some point. We haven't seen many of his other life gain in this game. I think we've seen 1 Fighting Spirit, I think.
Yeah, maybe at least blocking with 1.
Yeah, we saw some Wounded Bulls and stuff at the time, but that doesn't, gain us life back. But I mean, every point is so important for Majin here, especially with those 2 counters on that Dawnblade. That's, I think, the really scary part here is that Dawnblade is looming so huge on this game over the next turn. In fact, it's like, I actually think it's going to be really hard for Majin to get out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not being able to, if Majiinbae, so what Majiinbae wants to ideally do here is send a threat across now. The problem is that like
Josh can just take it, right? Like
yeah,
almost
he
everything.
can block pretty effectively here. He could take it to a degree, but I don't know.
Then, yeah, I was gonna say you can't just shrug it off. Now that I think about it, I got a little hasty there. There's still those boots on Majin's side that make stuff really scary. And speaking of scary, this is a fully powered Wounded Bull. This is coming in for 8, one of the most efficient attacks in the game. Pay 3, attack for 8.
So here, I think Josh probably will give up his Brave Forge braces and maybe the tunic as part of his blocking here. This is good. And so it's really important for Icelander to use her action point on her turn, because in order to be able to make her arcane damage from Arsenal stick, you have to strip some cards first. Notice that Icelander, when she's playing a Frost Hex strategy against, sort of more defensive decks, will try and do just this, so they can't pay through Frostbites nearly as effectively. Now, obviously, we're not on a Frost Hex strategy here, but this is still Majiinbae saying, I want to get Josh to a point where my disruption can end his turn.
Now, no damage got through there, but small victory for Majin. 2 cards from hand from Josh Lau, and blocked a little bit with the equipment here. So it does look like yellow is going to get pitched here. And here comes the scary part. This is the first attack this turn, but this Dawnblade's for 5 naturally right now. Yeah,
so Josh is thinking, I have 3 routes in my deck, or at least in my full list here. Majiinbae is at the part of the game where he's in grave danger. I mean, this is a lethal attack being represented here.
Yeah, now, he's in check for the rest of the game.
Now, what's strong though for Majiinbae here though, Tannon, he has to block this attack, right? Like he probably can't let Josh keep the counters, but Insidious Chill here will make it so Josh has to have like an Iron Song response in the arsenal. If he can strip cards with a fuse effect, if he can strip cards with, with any mechanism, he can make it so there's no guessing required in terms of what Josh is.
You can make Josh almost play face up, is what you're saying, yeah.
Yes.
And if you can make a Dorinthia player play face up, the game becomes much easier. I think that's the hardest part about playing against Dorinthia is you have to kind of understand the range they have from every spot. And it's easy for you. Like I hear you talk about this, you played this deck a ton, but like people like me who've never played the actual deck, only played against it, it's hard sometimes to understand the full range of what they can do every time. I think Majin's up for that challenge and has done his research and has probably, tested this matchup and played this matchup a bunch. But it's still hard when you're sitting in the seat and everything's going on and you're staring down a 5-power Dawnblade when you're at 4. So let's see, they're going to go back through the graveyards here.
Yeah, it might be, and Majiinbae also might, I don't know, like deploy the Storm Striders here to get Josh to like a lethal place as well. But if Majiinbae just throws a bunch of cards here, he needs to block this Dawnblade with at least 1 card. There's no equipment left. So that means that Majin cannot make use of all of his cards here. And obviously he gives Josh reprise. Now, if Josh blocked with a route last turn, normally when Dorinthia is in this spot, she wants to have access to that card. It's a game winner in and of itself. We've seen Josh beat Nathan with it. Josh wins plenty of games with route. He may have blocked with one because he has a second one. And seeing the route blocked with Dorinthia at this point in the game has to give Majiinbae pause for thought. I would say he has to fear that it might be lurking in Josh's hand or arsenal, or could get yanked out off a blue and a singing Steelblade.
We'll have to see what's going on. Majin definitely taking his time here. Can't blame him. This feels like what might be one of the last turns of the game. Trying to figure out what he can play around, what he can't. Because in this situation, you're also trying to figure out not just how to not lose. You're trying to figure out how to win from here if you're Majiinbae, and that's what's taking the extra amount of time. The whole blocking thing, that's only step 1. So he's got to figure out how he's supposed to win from here as well. And with Josh at 13, that's a tall order to do in 1 turn for him. All right, well, this is a decent block. This is technically a block for 3.
Yeah, I mean, for Dorinthia's purposes, though, getting a hit obviously is quite important. So, I mean, technically it is, right? Gaining the life is pretty important here. Majiinbae, if he wants to deploy his disruption, it has to happen here in the layer step. So before we move to reactions, he can actually still play from his arsenal. Josh is thinking, this is an underblock. And that kind of tells me that my opponent is playing with a defense reaction. If you get an Xaxis block or an underblock, here's that Iron Song.
This is a red one as well.
This is still lethal. Majiinbae has to have a defense reaction. What's it going to be, Caleb? One sink below left in the deck. One sink below to get him out of this situation. Checks graveyard. You may have to, I mean, I don't know what there is to go for, so to speak here. But this is, this is a problem for him, for sure. Josh can't deploy a route, though. Only one floating, one card in hand. But there are, like we've sort of talked about, a lot of other attack reactions that sort of cost one or less for Josh.
Sure.
There's the sink. Oh, he found it. Cool, man.
Yeah, the way this
That's
turn's played out,
crazy.
he had to have the sink, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
now
think
this
the underblock telegraphs that pretty heavily. Yeah.
So now this is blocking for 6 total. So only 2 is getting through right now.
Yep.
If there's a way to get +3 here, that would be game.
Yeah. And if that doesn't happen,
It's good.
there's a lot of uncertainty here for Josh, that's for sure. Josh might be holding a setup card in his hand because if he's trying to kill his opponent, then he'll probably just usually just swing a naked door blade here. I don't think this is an attack reaction.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Josh gonna take his time now here.
No bolters up for the Dorinthia, so this would be the end.
As of right now, there's an attack for 8 going on. There's a block for 2. The life has been gained, and the sink below has happened. So it does look like, yeah, the block. This is a block for 6. So 2 damage is technically getting through here.
Now, one more attack reaction. He has it. He has the Iron Song response.
This is for 11. That's only a block for 6. This would be lethal. And that's going to be lethal. Oh my God, Majiinbae has been eliminated from the Goliath Gauntlet. We will not have a repeat champion. And Josh Lau is on to the finals. Is this your dream scenario, Uber? I know you've been wanting this since he was put into the tournament. You have got to be doing cartwheels over there. I think we broke Mitch Leslie. I think we broke him. Look,
Bro, that is insane. We'll be doing cartwheels right now. I've got a kid trying to sleep in the room behind me, so I'm not going to get too excited, but this is what I'm telling you. And this is why I hype up these players a lot, because I think Josh is demonstrating that Dorinthia is, as not a tier 1 deck, right? You don't see her, in the top 8 of all these tournaments necessarily, but with the right player, you can absolutely get wins against the very best players in the world. There was a second Icelander matchup that Josh has had to navigate, and he's been able to get through both of them there. And frankly, I mean, in terms of Majiinbae's tools for answering what Dorinthia can do, he found most of them. There was a channel like Frigid that stayed around for a while. There was 2 Insidious Chills. There were multiple Ice Veins. There was even a Blizzard deployed. And there were 3 Sink Belows that came out of the deck here. Josh was able to find, just the right spots to start to put that pressure down. There were some turns where they weren't that exciting, right? It's like a swing Naked Dawn Blade and then pump for 3 into a 3 block, get some damage, chip away, and play the long game. But Josh, again, reminding us why he's one of the best warrior players in the entire world, and he's had to understand this matchup, because you aren't going to go out and win pro quests like he has. You're not going to make it to day 2, basically every main event that Josh has ever played, without understanding each of Dorinthia's matchups really, really well. Incredible showing. I am very, very impressed there, and we sort of knew it from Majiinbae. Either Josh doesn't have a defense reaction, attack reaction there, and he probably dies to the 3 cards that Margin kept, assuming they're a fuse, or he has one more attack reaction and is able to find the win. But incredible game. Joshua Lau is advanced to the grand finals of the Goliath Gauntlet 2.
What an amazing match. Utterly just floored with the level of play we've got there. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that KFAB Cards is our one and only sponsor for the Goliath Gauntlet. Make sure you check out kfabcards.com for all of your card game needs. I know that I can't wait. I'm going to probably be out there later this year. Uber, I'm trying to actually talk you into it. I know you got a kid coming on the way, so we'll see what kind of situation you're in. But if I have to, I'll pay for your damn flight out to Utah to get you there for the weekend so we can all hang out and produce some really cool content while we're out there. Not to mention 983 Media themselves. They make us look and sound better than we ever deserve in these matches, and they put in so much work behind the scenes. I really don't think they get enough love and credit for all they do. And last but not least, definitely LSS for providing us with some of the prizing here for the Goliath Gauntlet. Goes above and beyond every one of these tournaments to make sure that we can bring such great stuff to everybody here at home and give the players some incentive to bring their best, like you saw in this match here today.
I mean, I gotta love it. Yeah, obviously on the LSS note, I mean, they knew we were doing something, and the first question they asked is, how can we help? How can we be involved? How can we support this? So I want to thank them enough, and of course our other sponsors for making this possible. And that's the first of our semifinals done. Josh Lau advances to the grand final. He will take on the winner, Tariq Patel or Matt Rogers. We are dealing with national champions. We are dealing with some incredible players on the other side of the bracket, but Josh has already fought his way through so many of them, and he's taken down our inaugural Goliath Gauntlet champion in Majiinbae with his Dorinthia list to advance. What a great storyline, and I can't wait to see how it all ends.
Yeah, so make sure you keep your eyes glued here to 983 Media. We'll have that match for you as soon as possible. But for this match, Uber, I'm exhausted after this one. I'm going to need to take a nap after this and maybe cool myself off just a little bit. What hell of a match. Thanks for watching here this week, and we'll get you the next episode as soon as possible.